Gearing up here for the 2025 college football 12-team playoff, and it's exciting. I have a theory I want to peruse a little bit. I want to chat about, um, and it's really about what teams we believe are good, and what underlying reasons why do we believe that they are good. Right? This is not a committee discussion. This is not a who should get in. Who's in is in. I'm not talking about the G5. I'm not talking about Notre Dame. I'm not going to talk about BYU. I want to talk about specifically the SEC teams that are in, and this is not a committee discussion. This is a valuation discussion. So I want to go one by one, top down in terms of my valuations as I really look at it. Because here's the thing. We now have all the data. The whole season's been played. It's all happened. We know that the team you beat in week 6 turned out to be a 6-16 and every version of that, right? Let's look now and I'm going to critique, I guess, just the AP, the committee. I mean, you can endlessly critique them about what's the underlying reason for these valuations, and is it based on tangible things? Now, of course, it's subjective. I get it, but let's go ahead and start with Georgia. Georgia, one-loss SEC champion, and their one loss came in September by 3 to Alabama, as we know. They avenged that in the SEC championship in convincing fashion. I think they are properly valued. I think they are who we think they are. So no problem there. Okay, Texas A&M. Texas A&M goes into South Bend week 2 of the season and beats Notre Dame. I won't talk about the details of that game. Great win. Tough to go into South Bend and win. That's up there that's one of the best wins of the season. And then after that, they happen to play their eight SEC teams on their schedule happen to be the teams that finished the bottom 7 and Texas. And who was the only team they lost to was Texas. Now, they beat a lot of those teams the way that they should. Some of these scores I'm cool with in terms of, I think, they lived up to their hype a little bit. I mean, of course, that South Carolina game was insane, but I guess everyone's allowed to have the worst first half of football you've ever seen, but I digress. And I think they're undervalued relative to their SEC peers. I think they're the second best SEC team in the field. I really do. But still, Notre Dame was a hell of a game a long time ago, and then their most recent data point against Texas did not look good. And I'm not saying Texas is a pushover, but that was a convincing loss on their part. But again, I got it. Georgia, A&M. Ole Miss. This is where it starts to get a little interesting. This is where my theory really starts to come into play. What my theory boils down to is this. I think the SEC valuations I think it's all built on a house of cards. I think there is the inherent SEC bias that's left over from the pre-portal era when the SEC teams really did hoard all the talent, and you had Nick Saban there with the Alabama machine, and Georgia right after or during, a little overlap. I think that's antiquated. I think we need to look at the SEC with fresh eyes. So Ole Miss, their best wins, as they happened, I'll say. LSU, they were LSU's first loss. LSU was 4-0 going into that game, with one of their wins being at Clemson, which again we thought was impressive at the time. But now we know better, right? Or we should. So they beat LSU. Okay, great job. Looking back at that, that's not the win we thought it was. It really wasn't. They compete with Georgia. It was a crazy shootout. So, all right, at least you didn't get destroyed. That was a crazy game. And then he beat Oklahoma in Norman, who, as it turns out, is a playoff team, number 8. All right, but Ole Miss, where are the other wins? And look, they don't even have their coach anymore. So as far as their playoff chances go, I mean, I guess I'll get to that. But Ole Miss, I just put a question mark. I think they're overvalued, but I'm not as adamant about these next two. We need to talk about the 8-9 matchup in this playoff. It is a travesty that one of the two of Oklahoma and Alabama are going to be in the quarterfinals just because they're playing each other. Oh, and why are they playing each other? Because Alabama became the first team in the college football playoff era to lose their conference championship game and not move any spots back. I just don't get it. But let's dive into OU. They beat Tennessee. That was the all right. Look at them. Good job, Oklahoma. But who they lose to? They lose to Ole Miss, like I just talked about, and they lose to Texas, of course. It was Texas, and that was not like Texas was not playing well at that time, and it was 23-6. Mateer was banged up. This that fine, but come on. So the way I look at it, they lost to the two best teams on their schedule. And the wins that they're propped up on, Tennessee, who ended up being okay, and Bama, which I get why that's such an impressive win. They go into Tuscaloosa, they beat Alabama, okay. But, they're not impressive. Their last game of the season over LSU was, brutal. A brutal watch for anyone who was unlucky enough to watch it. In terms of eye test, not really there, at least not on offense. I am impressed with their defense, but other than that, what on this schedule inspires you to believe in Oklahoma? I struggle to find something. I think they are way overvalued. They got bumped up to 8 for God knows what reason, and then they just stayed there because these rankings, there's this inertia with these rankings. The voters, the committee, are so reluctant to question their previous valuations when new data emerges. And it's very frustrating. So, look, I think OU is probably the most overvalued team. But they're propped up on that Bama win more than anything. That Bama win, which, was a little fluky. Credit to them and their defense, but whenever you have an 87-yard pick six, the outcome of the game, or the final score is probably not super indicative of how the game actually played out. Because when you win the turnover battle and you have that huge, 14-point swing and you win by 2, look, a win's a win, great job, but come on. Now we got to talk about Bama, because again, this team is why Oklahoma is ranked where they are. Bama had one of the best wins of the season when they went to Athens and beat Georgia. Okay. What has happened since then? I'm going to use the same verbiage I used for Oklahoma. What has happened since then that, that inspires you to believe in this Alabama team? There's not much convincing. They beat Auburn by 7 and got some luck to do so. Oh, by the way, Oklahoma beat Auburn by the skin of their teeth and got super lucky to do that. It's like those wins are counted the same as an actual solid win. It's like, oh, well, they beat an SEC team. Bama is propped up on a win that has since been completely overwritten. Had they competed with Georgia in the SEC championship game, I would probably be singing a different tune, but they got destroyed. They finished with -3 rushing yards and held their 9 spot. Because, hey, they beat the team they just lost to, yeah, but they beat them 3 months ago. In what world is that a fair valuation? Is that a just valuation? I think I can answer that question. That's a normal valuation for the SEC and ESPN and college football playoff cabal. All right, it's a cabal. So I'm dubbing this 8-9 matchup that we're going to watch tonight, Oklahoma, Alabama, the Fraud Bowl. It's the Fraud Bowl 2025, and it's a little disgusting to me. I don't believe in either of these teams, and in fact, again, respect to Georgia, respect to A&M, and Ole Miss is a weird case with Lane being gone. But here's my bold prediction for the 2025 playoff. The SEC is going to go winless against other Power 4 opponents. So obviously, you have SEC in the 8-9. I got Miami over A&M because, look, Miami's got probably the best trenches on either side of the ball, the whole country, and Texas A&M is very strong too. But that travels. The lines travel. The offensive line travels. The defensive line travels. Um, so I think Miami's going to beat A&M, and then the winner of the Fraud Bowl is going to get their doors kicked in by a real Indiana team who is as proven as it gets. And then I guess that would leave Ole Miss to lose to Georgia, fine. And then Georgia will go on and lose to the winner of Miami and Ohio State. That's how I see it playing out. Um, it is a bold prediction. I know that the SEC, I'll give it its flowers. It's obviously power it's the SEC, but we really need to dive into these valuations a little more and think why. Because if we think Ole Miss is good because they beat Oklahoma, and we think Oklahoma is good because they beat Bama, and we think Bama is good because they beat Georgia, but then Bama lost to Georgia by a ton. It's a house of cards. The SEC is a house of cards, and I've never been a hater of the SEC, but I think I kind of need to be for this playoff for the time being. One, because I want to be right. But two, I really want the cabal, the college football playoff, SEC, ESPN cabal to cry. I want them to be sad, and I want football to make the decisions here. Thanks for watching. I'm going to leave you with this. This is my completed, filled out 2025 college football playoff bracket. As you can see, there are 0 SEC wins over other Power 4 teams. I think Oregon makes a nice little run, but ultimately it's kind of a boring outcome. I think Ohio State's gonna repeat here. So hey, with that, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the playoff.